I would like to invite our honorary Mr. Raj Shekhar Joshi ji to moderate this session. He is a very eminent person, and I request her to please be on the stage and moderate this session.
So I hope we have, after post-lunch, as they say, the energy level changes, but I hope we have enough energy in the hall, and we look forward to a very exciting session. Just continuing from previous session when we talked of, global environmental challenges and Indian context, I would certainly say that the less said, the better. We spoke a lot about it. Sitting in Delhi in an air-conditioned hall or around, we do not see what the impact is happening around the world, but it is enormous. It's enormous in terms of the causes which are there of heavy consumption of resources and release of pollutants into the atmosphere and ecosystems. The symptoms which we see, which are there in terms of sea levels rise, in terms of, first time there was rain in Greenland. It never rained in Greenland. Summit sheet, it was there. And various other impacts. The ocean acidity of pH is supposed to be lowest in the last 40,000 years. Species are getting extinct and so on and so forth. So these are the challenges. There is an Indian context to it. We also spoke about it. We also spoke about the three important dimensions, which are technology and innovation. We had finance, and we also had adoption and scale. Now, carrying forward from adoption and scale, that's a very, very important part. We can do many things, but if they are not adopted, or if they're not scalable, it doesn't go anywhere. It might be just a flash in a pan. And that's where the social and community dimension becomes extremely important. And unless until each of us is involved, there are so many examples around the world. And as Nitin Gadkari ji, our honorable chief guest, also said, so many small to medium-sized works going on. It's not going to be one mega project to improve environment. It's going to be a million projects to improve the environment by all citizens, society, and community. I was just now talking to the North Delhi public school principal. She was saying how her children can get engaged. Now that's what we need. We need to inspire the children of generation, because then they internalize it, and so on. So I think the social and community dimension is so important. Without which, adoption and scale will not be there. All these efforts will not go anywhere, and so on and so forth. And all of us have to play a role. So I would, in this panel discussion is expected to be, I would like to invite formally Siddharth Sharma ji, Group Chief Sustainability Development Officer, to share his thoughts, especially on the social and community dimensions. I also belong to a large corporate, so I know so much work is happening. And without the social and community involvement, all of this will not go anywhere. Even my personal example, I run a trust which works on water conservation in Maharashtra. And the maximum impact was there when we said we are not going to operate it. The community has to take responsibility to operate it. And that's what it became successful is there. So without taking much time, I'll invite Sharma ji. So all yours.
Just before we conclude this, we have 2 minutes. Of course, you spoke eloquently about the role of Tatas and the more of the corporate can do. One thing is that as we had the theme of social and community dimension, in your view, what actions can be taken so that we can have more, at the micro levels, more social, society getting involved, how community can be involved, and so on and so forth. Any particular thoughts on that?
So I think it's very important that you have to whether you talk about social issues or environmental issues, no person, no organization, no country can do anything on its own. We realize that. So the key out of this existential human crisis that humanity is facing today is that you have to collaborate and you have to make people realize. So when we talk about climate change, everybody talks about temperature is rising, there is this. Do you realize that the way you travel, the way you eat and consume food, the way you wear clothes, the way you kind of, as I said, the way you bathe, whether you use a shower or a bucket, that has an impact on the planet. It is 7 billion people who have to get together. And therefore, when you are framing programs, as I said, I gave this example that you talk about water. Water is, of course, a very sensitive issue because it is treated as a political good. And today, it's a public good, which has a political sensitivity. Now, the problem is that the pricing of water today does not reflect its value. Right? So, if you realize that there is a value to it, you can bring about behavioral change. So, behavioral change can come about. There's a whole field which is called behavioral economics. And how do you price things in a manner that people realize that they are valuable and they are scarce and they are finite. These are not infinite resources. The other thing is you bring about awareness. And the third thing is you understand what is the point of view of the person for whom you are tailoring that program. Because it can't be I have been very clear that it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. So if you are dealing with something in the north of India, the social context may be very different from if you're dealing in the east of India or the west of India. Now, you cannot have the problem in our processes for a long time has been that we've thought that one solution will fit. India is too diverse a nation. And therefore, unless you are able to, and I was talking to Mr. Bharat Lal, who was a colleague of mine at the President's Secretariat and who was till very recently the director of the Jal Jeevan Mission, one of the biggest programs that Government of India has launched. Problem is that unless you get parties, which is what this program did, because you made the community responsible for ensuring water security. And unless you don't get, so for me, the biggest thing is community participation, community sensitization. And if corporates and governments kept that in mind, because if there has to be that involvement can be in terms of money, it can be in terms of effort, it can be in terms of framing of the entire concept and the project, or it can be a mix of everything. It can't be that I am a corporate or I am a government and I know your needs best and I am giving you this.
No, absolutely. It has to be a dialogue.
It has to be a dialogue.
It has to be dialogue, and especially now also, for example, in 2020, the mayor of Paris, they said there's a movement which says that reduce consumption. Why do we need so much growth? Why don't we moderate it or reduce the consumption? For example, in Paris, they said, okay. Yeah, sorry. They said that, as I was talking of, reduce consumption, moderated. Why do we need to consume so much? There's a 15 minutes, rule, which they said, 15-minute model, which they're making in Paris, for example, that anything which a person needs, you should be able to get within 15 minutes. Why do you need to commute to different parts of the city? And so on and so forth. There's also in Stockholm a model of, for example, commuting. Now, how we can give, they are giving free walking instruments or running instruments or running devices to people and making free bus passes, for example, so that you use bus rather than this. So I think these are somewhat kind of interventions. Do you feel that some of these interventions of, moderating consumption or limiting like this 15-minute, norm, which is likely to spread into Europe in a big way as we see it to be, except for the distraction which has been there in recent times. Do you feel these kind of things can work in India?
I definitely think so. I think the issue here is that let's also put it in an overall macro context. You see, almost 50% of the infrastructure, or more than 50% of the infrastructure that India is going to need as you transition to a low carbon economy, as you transition to a green economy, has not been built. So you don't have legacy issues because most of that infrastructure is going to be set for the next 30, 40, 50 years. That infrastructure you are going to start building today. And therefore, as I said, if you can incorporate that vision that you have today into the infrastructure, the question of retrofitting doesn't arise. That problem is far less in our case than it is in the case of many other countries, which have obviously had very, very advanced and developed infrastructure. But at the same time, I don't see that if people are given, let us just look at very close examples. Let us not go into, look at the Delhi Metro. Look at the airport express line. I am going to catch my flight to Bombay right now. I will go to Shivaji Stadium after this, drop my car there, check into the Air India counter and get into the metro and reach the airport in 20 minutes. Now, if we can be given facilities, if every normal citizen can be given facilities like this, why would you use a car? If you have effective public transport, if you have policies, if you look at most of these business districts in some of the top countries of the world, it is such a heavy tax that you pay during peak hours if you use a vehicle. Now, it's only a question of ensuring that you frame policies which kind of work with the masses and you sensitize them and tell them that this is for their benefit. And mostly you will be surprised that the inputs will come from them. They will tell you what works, what does not work. So the entire model of leadership, whether it is in corporate India or governance or in government, has to be one which is collaborative and which kind of caters to the needs of the individual citizen. And once that happens, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that every citizen will rise to the occasion. And people, it may take time for change processes. But if people see that there is value in what is being done, they start to follow that. I mean, everybody is a rational human being. And if they think that, so I think definitely my thing is that it has to start from being very participative, very bottom-up, and very collaborative.
Absolutely. So, one point which, of course, you said in the towards the end, and which is a very important theme, and this is not just a crisis; it's an opportunity of enormous proportions. It's an economic opportunity. The trillions of dollars going to be spent on climate change or other areas are going to be pumped into economy only. And that's the benefit is going to be there. So thank you so much. I think it's been a very wonderful presentation of yours and also this exchange. And thank you so much.